Hello, Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today I'm going to be reviewing one of my more anticipated films of the year, and that is Argylle. Argylle is directed by Matthew Vaughn, who brings us, such films as Kick-Ass, the Kingsman series, X-Men First Class. I've always been a real big fan of Matthew Vaughn. I've enjoyed how he shoots his action, how he does his colors for films especially. I love the way he shoots everything and adds a different color palette to all his films. I love the cast he always brings together for these. He's starting to kind of do the thing where he's starting to bring a lot of people in from older films, but you know what? Work with what you got, right? And with Argylle, this was a movie that had a little bit more of a uniqueness to it. It's not something we haven't seen before, but it was something that was at least intriguing enough that allowed me to get excited for it come at the beginning of the year. The general plot for Argylle is a reclusive author who writes espionage novels about a secret agent in a global spy syndicate realizes the plot of the new book she's writing starts to mirror real-life world events in real time. Your main cast, you got Dallas Bryce Howard, you got Henry Cavill, you got Sam Rockwell, Bryan Cranston, the list goes on and on. Always a great cast with Matthew Vaughn films. And much like the Kingsman movies, you have a great cast, you have a uniqueness to these films, sometimes to unbelievable believability in terms of the action and everything that happens into it. And you either have to be on board or not. And if you're on board, you're probably going to enjoy the movie that you're watching. If you're not on board, you're probably going to think it's stupid and cartoonish and all that kind of stuff. And Argylle loves to dance on that fine line. And I think if you're a fan of Matthew Vaughn films and you can get on board with the crazy cartoonish nature of the world building around here, then I think you're going to be more okay with Argylle's outlandish things that happen in the movie. And if you're not a fan of that or you're not on board with that, then you're probably not going to enjoy the film overall. Dallas Bryce Howard plays Ellie Conway, the writer of the Argylle books. And Bryce Dallas Howard, I think, does a solid job in the film. And I will say this with everyone in the movie, especially Sam Rockwell and Howard, they only get stronger as the movie goes on. I will say that in this film, which clocks a little about 2 hours and 20 minutes, is that throughout the film, there were points where I started to get frustrated or annoyed with certain things that were happening in the film. Sometimes it was a director's decision of how they wanted to shoot a scene, or characteristics of characters and how they were acting and how they were treating other characters based off of stuff that we didn't quite know, or reasons why they were acting that way. And I'm kind of dancing around this because I don't want to spoil anything. But by the end of the film, with certain twists and turns, it started to make some of the things that I wasn't agreeing with at the beginning of the film make sense, logically flow, and kind of almost take care of the issues that I had throughout the beginning of the movie. Now, granted, you could chalk that up as like, oh, it completely fixed all the problems. Or you can say, you probably shouldn't have put us in those problems to begin with. Which is kind of a plus or minus of Argylle. Some of the things did get fixed, and I was actually happy about it, and actually made those situations stronger. And then there were other times where it did those things. I was like, well, they could have just not had done that, and you wouldn't have to win me back by the end of the movie. So it's a double-edged sword. It works to a point, it doesn't work to a point. But Matthew Vaughn's flair in this. Now, you could say he over CGI'd it, or he over green screened it on certain effects, because there's definitely a lot of fight sequences that definitely are unbelievably cartoonish. But at the end of the day, like most Matthew Vaughn films, I had fun watching Argylle. I had a blast watching it, and I will say that in spite of the theater that I was watching it in, because we had a blown speaker in the theater, so every 5 to 10 minutes the speaker would pop and crackle really loud and obnoxiously, which really kind of took us out of the moment or the movie every time it happened. But in spite of that, I enjoyed Argylle for what it was. All of its flaws and stuff. At the end of the day, I had fun with this movie. The people I watched it with, aka my girlfriend, she had a blast watching this. She was laughing along the way. I was laughing. There were some funny moments that they probably could have doubled down on, or there were moments that they really could have had upstage and have a great moment that they didn't do. But when you had Matthew Vaughn go full Matthew Vaughn, and what I mean by that, full Kingsman to a point, it was a blast and an enjoyable viewing to watch. And I think if you guys can get on board with that, I think you guys are going to have a fun time overall, too. Sam Rockwell, it's great as always. Henry Cavill is probably the one performance that was not necessarily needed as much. There are points where he pops up in the film that is not necessarily needed, but he's in there because it's Henry Cavill and you want to use him as to your fullest potential, but you probably could have gotten a lot less Henry Cavill in this. Probably would have made the story flow better. This is probably my favorite Bryce Dallas Howard's performance. I enjoyed her throughout. The things that the things that I didn't like about her in the beginning of the film were fixed by the end of the film. Bryan Cranston plays Director Ritter. He's the villain of the film. He does not go full Heisenberg. Would have loved it if he did, but Bryan Cranston's always great no matter what he's in. Catherine Keener is great in the movie. Ariana DeBose is solid in the film for what we get. Same thing with John Cena. And probably the most straightforward John Cena performance we've gotten out of him, probably since his early days of acting. At the end of the day, like I said, I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the world building. There is a mid-credit scene, so be on the lookout for that when the movie ends. Whether I liked that or not remains to be seen. It kind of depends on see where we go from Argylle, the whole story of the Matthew Vaughn verse from here. But at the end of the day, I think Argylle is a solid film. I had a lot of fun with it. It's something that I will go back and rewatch. It's something that I would recommend people check out in theaters if you're a fan of Matthew Vaughn and his films, or a fan of Sam Rockwell, Bryce Dallas Howard, Henry Cavill, all the rest of the cast. I think you're going to have a fun time watching them throughout. Like I said, the action's great. It looks great. Maybe a little too green screen at certain points, but I still had fun through the most part watching it. I'm going to give Argylle an 82%. Definitely probably my highest score of the year so far, but it's February 2nd. There's not that many great films to start the year. It's definitely something that probably won't be up in your top tier even by half year review, but I think for what it was, it's a solid first film of the year to really go out and enjoy, to get you right back into the movie season before we hit summer here in the next month or two. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you guys did, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, you have to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, we have the Movie Crusaders Oscar show, where Brian, Michaels, and myself go over the nominations for the top 5 awards during Oscar night and who we think will and should win those awards, as well as go over our version of the Movie Crusaders Oscars, where we give you our nominations and winners for those top 5 awards. They are not the same as the Oscars, so be on the lookout for that. As well as our latest episode of the Movie Crusaders Chat About, where Brian and I go over everything that we have seen during the month of January. It's a lot more than normal, so be on the lookout for that. A bunch of reviews for films that came out in the month of January. Brian and I will also be back at some point here, probably on another Movie Crusaders Chat About. We'll probably talk about this one in greater spoiler detail, because there is stuff to talk about Argylle. We just don't want to give it all away here on this review, so be on the lookout for all that. Coming up next, we also have Lisa Frankenstein coming out later next week. Whether we will have an actual straight-up review for that, I'm not sure, but we will be talking about it on the channel, whether it's with me and Brian or me by myself doing a review like this. Kind of depends on whether I get to see it in time or not. But we got plenty coming up on the channel. Also, don't forget to check out the Wrestling Crusaders with myself and Jordan JPO Owens for all your pro wrestling fan needs. We're heading into the road to WrestleMania, so there's plenty to talk about that. But until next time, in case I don't see you, go watch some movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.